Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit of technical analysis on Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets, and more specifically, we're going to be doing a little bit of short-term technical analysis on Bitcoin to start the video off with, because as we can see here, Bitcoin just yesterday broke below the support level of $3,575, and that's actually a rather long-term level of support, as we can see here on our chart. We've touches on this level back here, a level of resistance right there. This is a rather important level of support, and we are now below it. But in this video, I also want to talk about something else, and that's basically the rule of three that you see show up in markets a lot, because a lot of times markets will do things either in one big move, as we saw right over here. We saw Bitcoin broke out in one move, and sometimes also just about as commonly you'll see the market will do something in a cycle of three. And in fact, what we see here is that Bitcoin has crashed once, twice, and now three times. I'm going to be explaining exactly what that might mean later on in today's video, guys. So if you enjoyed today's video, definitely consider dropping a like, hitting that subscribe button, and smashing the notification bell, guys. I do think we have a good one lined up for you in today's video. I hope you enjoy it. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Bitcoin on Coinbase anyway is trading around $3,543. We didn't break very far below this level of support that Bitcoin was above, but we did break below it. Now that's an important fact to understand, is that Bitcoin did break below a rather significant level of support. I was not exaggerating. This is an important level of support. Right back over there, we have a lot of touches. We have a little bit of support and then a break right there. We have a level of resistance right there, resistance on it right there, support on it right there. And for a couple of days, we traded above this level of around $3,575 as a level of support. So it is definitely a rather important level of support, probably seconded only to $3,100 to $3,000, that support range down there. This was probably the second most important level of support that Bitcoin had, and we have now broken it. But an interesting thing to keep in mind is that Bitcoin broke it, but Bitcoin didn't break it in a very big way. As you can see, Bitcoin only lost about 2% of its valuation after breaking below $3,575. Now, what you would typically expect to happen in a situation like this is that when Bitcoin breaks such an important level of support, that in fact you're going to see a much larger bearish movement. In fact, that's exactly what we saw when Bitcoin broke $6,000 over here. Bitcoin for the next 3 or 4 weeks or so lost almost 50% of its valuation, close to about 45% of its valuation. Over here, Bitcoin's broken not a comparable level, but also a very strong level of $3,575, and we haven't seen a massive crash in price action, which does lead us to believe that the bears might not be as strong as we otherwise gave them credit for. This is definitely a point in favor of the bulls, or in another way of putting that would be, this is a point in favor of the bears, but it's not a very strong point in the favor of the bears. We did break it, so obviously the bears are the ones that are in control here, but the fact that we didn't break it in a much more substantial way, it leads me to believe that the bulls are a little bit stronger than we were perhaps giving them credit for. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and do the crypto market recap really quickly, and we'll jump back on into the TA. Bitcoin across all exchanges is trading just around $3,600, and you might be wondering, well, if it's trading above around $3,600, why is Bitcoin below this level of support? That is, of course, because of the discrepancy in price action on Coinbase and Bitfinex, two of the largest exchanges in the cryptocurrency space. You can see here on Bitfinex, the level of support was actually a bit different. It was sitting up here around $100 higher, and Bitcoin is below this level of support on all charts, even though it would technically be above it if this price action were applied to the Coinbase chart. Anyway, Bitcoin's down by about 2% over the last 24 hours. We have one double-digit gainer in Revin, and we have a lot of we have a lot of losers, period. We have 4 double-digit losers: Coin, Repo, Hypercash, and Maker. Not a great day for the cryptocurrency markets, but like I said, there's a silver lining in everything, and the fact that Bitcoin didn't crash a lot harder is definitely something to keep an eye on, because when you see one thing that you oftentimes see in markets is that it's kind of hard to discern how strong the bulls and the bears are. But there are some points of clairvoyance where you get a really good feeling for who's stronger, the bulls or the bears. And you also get a really good feeling for how strong they are exactly. And a lot of times, the best way to tell, and I talk about this in the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy, linked in the description in the video, the strength of the bulls and the bears, I believe I talk about there anyway. A lot of times what you see happen is that you can get a good understanding of how strong the bulls and the bears are when a breakout happens. Because when a breakout happens, pretty much all of the restraints that were on whichever faction is doing the breaking out, the bulls or the bears, are taken off for a little while. So when Bitcoin, for example, broke this downtrend of resistance right here, Bitcoin broke it, and the bulls were kind of let loose, and the bulls were able to run as far as they were going to before they ran out of steam, which means that the bulls were only strong enough to push Bitcoin about 6 or 7% here, 5-6%, something like that, before the bulls ran out of steam. And of course, we Bart Simpson down and proved that the bulls were only able to push us 5%. This little move right right here, followed by this subsequent move to the downside, proves to us that the bulls are very weak at this point right here. Otherwise, we'd be trading farther higher because Bitcoin had just broken a downtrend, which is one of the best times to get an understanding of how strong the bulls or the bears are. And the same thing is true for a break to the downside, because when Bitcoin broke this level of support here, Bitcoin basically had free reign. As far as my technical analysis is showing me, other than $3,500, which is an important level of support, don't get me wrong, that's a psychological level of support. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of support under Bitcoin. Bitcoin could very easily start running down to $3,100, but it didn't. And like I said, whenever you see a breakout, a lot of times that is a point of clairvoyance where you can get a really good feeling for how strong whichever faction is doing the breaking out is. And the fact that the bears didn't break it stronger is definitely something to keep an eye on. And that is really a good lesson to learn when you're doing your technical analysis, because it's very important to understand which faction is in control. Now, where does all this leave us? I know I've been talking about theory here and the strength of the bulls and the bears, but let's put some practicality on this and try to get an idea of where Bitcoin is going in the short term and in the longer term. And there's also one other thing I want to talk about. Of course, I mentioned the rule of 3 earlier, and that would indicate that perhaps we're about to see some kind of bounce, actually, because obviously with this breakout and then this breakout and then this breakout, the breakouts have been getting smaller. Largest, medium, and smallest, they've been getting smaller, which would also indicate that the bears are getting weaker. We also have a nice little bounce here. As you can see, Bitcoin is moving to the upside. When we stopped right here, we were moving to the downside. When we stopped right here, we were moving sideways. And now when we stopped out, we're moving to the upside. There are a lot of things that are indicating that there may be a little bit of strength coming out of the bulls, perhaps just enough for Bitcoin to actually get up here and test $3,575 and perhaps even break it temporarily. I'm not saying that the bulls are really back in control. I think the bears are probably still ever so slightly more in control for the slightly longer term. But the fact that Bitcoin's bounced here and is moving to the upside indicates that the bulls might be a little bit stronger. Anyway, like I said, let's go ahead and apply this to some longer-term technical analysis and try and get a better grasp of where Bitcoin is going. Is Bitcoin going to $3,100? Is Bitcoin going to $5,000? Where does it seem that Bitcoin is going? Well, if you read the comment section, you're going to see a prediction for literally every single dollar value down to the cent for where Bitcoin is going to go. I know, guys, I read all your comments. I see a lot of people saying, oh, well, Bitcoin's going to go to $5,000 in the next week. And I see some people saying, well, Bitcoin's going to be at $2,000 by the end of January. And I think you're both wrong if that's what you believe, but if you believe that and you have a good reason to believe it, then look and go where the evidence goes. But the evidence that I'm looking at tells me that Bitcoin is probably going to continue moving downwards a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that the Bitcoin bears are strong enough to bring us all the way down to $3,100. And that might bring us to the question, well, if Bitcoin is going to continue going south, then where is Bitcoin going to go if it's not going to go to $3,100? What are our price targets? And it's kind of hard to form price targets right around here because we don't have a ton of really great levels of support to look at. We can come out here and look at moving averages, and we don't really have any on the daily chart. We can come out here to the weekly chart, and we can look, and we are sitting close to the 200 daily simple move, the 200 weekly simple moving average, excuse me. And as you can see, this might be a very important level of support that we may be contending with pretty soon. As you can see, it's curving up right now, and it's sitting up here around $3,265. This is a very, very powerful level of support. Alicia Rastani actually recently did a video on the 200 weekly moving average. I highly recommend checking that video out. And this is something I've been talking about for a very long time, the power of the 200 weekly simple moving average. And I've talked about it a lot on Bitcoin. I've talked about how it was a good sign it was a good way to measure when the bull market started. If you go back on the really old charts, there was some interesting stuff happening with it over here. And I've also been calling it as one of the bottoms for Bitcoin for a long time, because Bitcoin was moving down towards $3,000, down towards this 200 weekly simple moving average. So this may end up being the place that we actually stop out at, around $3,200 to $3,300 here on Coinbase. As you can see, that's where this is sitting. That's the only real obvious level of support that we're looking at right now. We don't have a whole lot of other levels of support as defined by the charts. You could say something like this, where we go into the hourly chart and you could look at all the levels of support and the bounces that we got around this region, and you might say that we're going to get some kind of bounce down here. You could definitely draw a level of support. Something like this is not as strong as what I like to use, but that would be valid because there's a lot of bounces down here, and that would line up pretty well with the 200 weekly simple moving average. So in short, the bulls seem to be gathering a little bit of their strength, so this may not happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin went down to around $3,300, down towards that 200 weekly simple moving average. That is an extremely important moving average on the daily chart and on the weekly chart. Keep an eye on that one. I have a lot of videos on the channel talking about that MA. Incredibly, incredibly powerful. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about one last thing before we wrap up here, and that would have to do with the long-term volatility outlook for Bitcoin. And what do I mean by that? Well, of course, as we look back on 2018 with not so rose-tinted glasses, we see that Bitcoin was very, very volatile at the beginning of the year. Bitcoin crashed something like 70% at the beginning of the year. And that was a very volatile move for Bitcoin. And that was a very volatile move following a 2,000% move on Bitcoin in 2017. But as we saw in 2018 and moving on here into 2019, volatility has been dropping off. Gradually but surely, volatility has been declining, and we've seen that volatility has dropped off in a very major way. And that's something that is typical of bear markets. That's not something that's surprising in any way, shape, or form. But it is an important trend that we need to keep up with, and we do need to understand that even though Bitcoin broke $6,000 and this was a very volatile movement, if you cut out this piece of the market from right here to right here, then we see that Bitcoin has had very low volatility for the last 3 months. This was very volatile because we broke literally the most important support level on Bitcoin of all time, or at least for the last several years. So of course we were going to have a volatile movement there. But other than those movements, we've seen very, very low volatility. And the fact that the bulls were only able to achieve a 5% breakout a couple of days ago when we broke bullish here, and then the bears have only been able to achieve this, which is only about a 6 or a 7% bearish move. Excuse me, I had the number wrong there, about a 13% bearish move. The fact that we were only able to achieve that leads me to believe that volatility is dropping off again, and that also lends credence to the thing that I've been saying for a long time, that Bitcoin is moving into an accumulation phase and is basically going to be trading in this channel here for the next several months. I don't see Bitcoin getting out of this kind of trading channel in this range, as the dictionary technical analyst might call it, over the next couple of months. I think that Bitcoin's probably going to be trading sideways here for quite some time, until the actual bull market starts later on in 2019 or in 2020. And the fact that we've seen these kind of moves over the last couple of days that indicate indecisiveness as to whether or not the bulls or the bears are in control does indicate to me that we're moving into an accumulation phase. We're going to continue seeing low volatility, and that we are probably going to see the bear market start to wrap up over the next 6 months, because like I said, we're seeing that indecisiveness. It's not so obvious that the bears are the ones in control, because we saw this bullish move and now we've seen some bearish moves, and it looks like it might be about to go bullish again. Anyway, guys, I do want to clarify one thing. I said that we may be going to $3,300, and I'm also saying that we're looking a little bit bullish here. I think that what we very well may see happen is Bitcoin pull down to $3,300. We may have the strength to do that, and then actually get a bounce there. And there's also a very good possibility that we just already bounced at $3,500. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. And it's also very possible that we already got a bounce here and we'll start moving to the upside. But anyway, guys, that is basically going to do it for today's video. Tell me in the comments section down below what you think of that technical analysis. Do you think the bulls are starting to get a little bit of their strength back, as evident by the way the chart is moving and the fact that we're getting stronger bounces every time we crash, and that the crashes are getting smaller? I definitely like analyzing charts in that way, and getting a getting a feeling for the strength of the bulls and the bears is honestly, in my opinion, one of the best ways to understand what the markets are doing, why the markets are doing it, and being prepared for what the markets are going to do next. Because if you can understand the motivations and the strengths of both the factions, the bulls and the bears, then you have a very good shot at predicting which direction the market is going to move in whatever time frame you're looking at, which is why I created the Cryptocurrency Technical Analysis Academy and the video in it about the strength of the bulls and the bears. If you guys want to check that out, link is in the description. Anyway, guys, like I said, that is basically going to do it for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.